Welcome to Straight to the Point. I'm your host, Representative Joe D'Orsi. In a world of long-windedness, I'm here to deliver you the Capitol News in 10 minutes or less. So, let's get straight to the point. So this is the Straight to the Point podcast. I am Representative Joe D'Orsi, and I am joined in studio today by Myles Slade-Bowers. He is a government affairs consultant for AFC, which stands for American Federation for Children. Myles, welcome back to the Capitol.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. It's always a pleasure to be here, man, and especially with, state reps like you or legislators like you that are so hard point on doing right by families and by students by any means necessary. So thank you for being who you are and doing what you do day to day.
You're certainly welcome, and you have roots here in Pennsylvania, in the mid-state area. You were a graduate of Bishop McDevitt.
Yeah, the Bishop McDevitt High School. There was one.
It's like the Ohio State.
The Ohio State, exactly. Alabama, Michigan, all your great football legendary schools come shop with us. There was a Bishop McDevitt out in Philadelphia. We don't count them. They're our secondary namesake, but they're closed now, so we're still ranking, loving, thriving. So
yep.
Go Crusaders.
So your educational journey is, correct me if I'm wrong, is what started you in the trajectory of being a major advocate for school choice.
Absolutely.
How has that led you here, and how has it guided you in the school choice realm?
It lit a fire under me, just to keep it frank. I received a tax credit scholarship program. I actually received both the EITC and the OSTC in the last 2 weeks before my tuition payment was due. And I got kind of moved up in a waiting list of students that there was over 50,000 kids waiting. And I was one of the lucky, fortunate few chosen to receive those scholarships. And in my mind, that was totally unfair that 50,000 other kids that had been waiting, that had qualified and had been on that list before me didn't also get to receive that. And so I immediately just started asking why. That was my first approach, and I got connected with some people and like, well, really, not too many good reasons. And that I was young, I was arrogant, and I was excited. And that pushed me to where I am today, where by any means necessary, we're going to ensure that families have the opportunity to send their child to an educational environment that best meets their needs, period, whether here in the Commonwealth or across the country.
So we're happy and grateful in Pennsylvania to have the EITC, OSTC opportunity. But it stops right there, Myles. As you know, we had Lifeline scholarships on the table. The governor actually campaigned on that. Lifeline, for those viewers and listeners, in a nutshell, was a $100 million appropriation to fund students in the bottom 15% of performing schools. I'm introducing, or reintroducing rather, a universal school choice bill, because I don't think, as much as I care about low performing schools and those students escaping that, I don't want to discriminate in any way. I think all students should have that opportunity. But so we're a ways back in the fight. Can you talk about some of the other states across the land, and there's been several over the last couple of years, that have gotten universal school choice done, and some of the early good results from those states?
Yeah, so talk about, everyone's favorite state to talk about school choice in is Florida, a tiered system for school choice based on need. Really lively, thriving program. You have Arizona, Wyoming has recently passed a program, Louisiana has a program, Texas will be soon to pass their program. We're hoping, to make some serious headway this session. And on day one, Texas will be the largest school choice program in the nation with over $1 billion on day one.
So you're confident that Texas will get that done?
Confident that Texas will get that done. And once Texas passes, we'll have more than 50% of students eligible in the United States for an ESA program.
Wow. Yeah, because Texas serves millions of students. I had Jack Johnson, the Senate Majority Leader of the state of Tennessee, the volunteer state, on my podcast a couple weeks ago. They're another state that has gotten school choice done.
Yep.
The interesting thing about Florida, Myles, and we'll get into some of the myths, or busting the myths about school choice here in a moment, but the very interesting statistic about Florida is, as their program has matured, what you and I know would happen has happened, and it's that public school outcomes have increased. So obviously that's great news. None of us are against public schools.
Right.
But let's talk about some of the myths, and that segues to the first myth, that school choice will take away resources and money for public schools. Bust that for me.
Yeah, so we just just not a reality, right? We hear that all the time, that it's taking money away from the public or general education fund. More often than not, school choice programs end up being a new appropriation. And on top of that, if any kind of money that the students get a benefit from district funding, they don't even take the majority of that. Most per pupil allocations across the country sit around just above 17.5, and I'm being pretty modest when I give that. It's usually much higher. The student generally only takes about $8,000 of that per pupil allocation, and the district gets to retain funds that for a student that they're no longer educating. So really we're talking about a net positive for districts. And then that student also in turn gets to be properly educated in an environment that they enjoy. And again, like you said, we're not against public schools. Matter of fact, public schools are part of that whole school choice mantra. We want families and students to have a choice. There are amazing public schools all across the country that are doing amazing things. And there certainly are some bad schools as well, not just bad public, but bad charters and bad privates. And there is no good reason that we should allow or persist or perpetuate education in environments or in institutions where that's not actually serving students. We need to kind of trim some of the fat there, get through some of the weeds, and ensure that when we plant a seed, that it's going to grow and it's going to have some longevity and it's going to be fruitful for the next generations.
What about rural schools? That's another myth that I often hear, that these school choice programs are leaving behind all rural area kids.
Yeah. So one of the big things that a lot of people say is there's no choice in my area. And kind of our response to that is, once school choice programs are passed, it opens up the doorway for school choice or school innovation, where you're going to get your next and greatest charter schools and your homeschool co-ops. You're going to see in the, years down the line the next private school, but certainly in those immediate responses, especially if the family isn't satisfied with their district option, they're fantastic cyber charter programs and cyber school programs that work really, really well for students, and they help alleviate some of the loss that they experienced in the school that they didn't enjoy. Or again, it's not my immediate assumption that every student or every person is going to not like their district school. So facing that argument, I always hark back to the whether it's the administrator or it might be former school choice former public school employee. Like, what does that say about the district school? If your number one fear is that as soon as we get school choice, all the kids are leaving. Like, what does that say about the quality of education
exactly.
we provide?
It's a telling posture to have.
Yeah, it's a telling posture to have.
Innovation is a word that comes to my mind when I think about school choice. And talking before the cast here, you shared about string theory charter school. This place innovates left and right. Can you talk about the innovation that's present there, but also they're doing it at a fraction of the cost of other schools in the area?
Yeah. So Philadelphia, one of the largest school districts in the Commonwealth, if not the largest, and has some of the highest funding per pupil in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. There's this small, I'm not going to call it small, string theory charter school, has a little over 2,000 students, roughly. Their per pupil allocation is about $11,000. And they have a myriad of different resources and different things that the students get to achieve. So they're recently, one of their brand new programs that they recently started is a college or a pathway to higher learning. They're 11th and 12th graders. They'll finish high school with an associate's degree. They are home ec classes. They partner with a Michelin star chef. They have a flight simulator. They want to start a new program educating new pilots, and they want to partner with all these different industries. They partner with or partner and communicate with people who run industry in Philadelphia, whether it's the Sixers or the Flyers. They want to say, like, hey, you don't have to outsource for your talent. We have the next greatest and brightest in the nation right here in the Commonwealth, and they just happen to be right down the door or right down the street from you now. And they're able to do that on $11,000 per pupil, versus a school down the street that gets roughly $36,000 per pupil.
That's 3 times more.
3 times more, and they don't have a C. Like, we're not talking about whether or not the kids can read. We're not talking about lobster dinners. We're not talking about elevators, flight simulators, innovation think tanks in the building. We're talking about air conditioning.
Yep.
We try to, case in point, argue that the funding is the number one issue, but I mean, this serves as a great case study that we need to start revisiting these conversations. We can't just pass a faceless bill that doesn't have any structure behind it, because our kids desperately need an answer today. And as we continue to write lazy policy and placate the issue to other times, other events, and say, well, you know, in 5 years we'll have it figured out. How many generations is that? How many graduating classes are we willing to allow to fail or struggle in exchange for getting a few more years in a comfortable legislative seat at the Capitol?
Yeah, I often say it's very common to hear Democrats in this building say that the solution is a blank check to education. And like I often say, Myles, I've never heard a more uncreative, lazy way to go about it.
Yeah.
Lightning round question here. Gen Z, which is roughly 13 to 27-year-olds, very unique generation. We were talking about that a little bit before the cast. Why is the traditional model of the sage on the stage that we're recycling from the 1930s, which doesn't work in the 2030s, 2020s, why is that archaic, and why should we be looking to a more school choice-based model for that generation?
When we're just addressing, you know, kind of the tone of Generation Z, their big stick is genuinity. Does this provide something for me? Is this entity, is this object, is this moral, is this idea what it says it is? And so they're no longer satisfied with the run-of-the-mill answer. You're not going to be able to run circles around these kids anymore because they don't have any respective person. They're fairly transactional. They're there for their bottom line, and they don't see the light at the end of the tunnel with the vision that we've given before them. They want more, and they're demanding more. So we're going to have to meet their expectations, because in a few years they're going to be in charge, and the rest of us are going to be at their whim. So it's necessary to start making these steps for investing long-term in the nation's future, and we're going to achieve that through choice programs. We're going to get that done by having a high-quality education for every single child, not just for those who can afford it. No longer going to be leaving kids behind in failing zip codes. We're not going to allow schools that don't actually serve students, that do not meet the standard, the bare minimum of education outcomes. Can't allow that to persist, whether it's public, charter, or private. We need to do a lot of overhaul here in the Commonwealth and across the country to ensure that our students get the best of what we have to offer, because we spend way too much money. At the end of the day, how much we spend versus what we're getting out, it's not adding up. And before long, we're going to really be starting to see the toll of that waste.
Yeah, and we're certainly trying to correct that in Pennsylvania. He is Myles Slade-Bowers. He is with the American Federation for Children. Myles, thanks for joining.
Hey, thank
Straight
you,
to the point.
This has been Straight to the Point. Visit repjod.com/mypodcasts.